welcome to our first ever episode of the Swing Society podcast, featuring yours truly and my co-host, Mr. Chris Howard.
What's
How you
up,
doing,
buddy?
Chris?
Pretty good. Excited.
Are you? For those who don't know, Chris and I have known each other for 10 years, maybe. I want to say around 10 years.
Yeah,
We did
probably
a
a little
golf
more
school
than that.
together back in 2017, I think, for the first time out in Vegas.
Mhm.
And you're still in
Yep.
Vegas.
I am still based in Vegas. Yeah, this is my 10th anniversary tour. So yeah, we did that on in Fort Lauderdale. We did it in Vegas. We did a few. It was a lot of fun. It started up kind of the way my business goes. We've been together for a while, bud.
So tell me what your business is now. How has it changed? How has your business evolved in the last 10 years?
Woo. I mean, so when we first started, knowing each other, I guess you were probably sitting there with like 10,000 followers on Instagram and I had like 1,000. And I think we were just both local golf coaches teaching regular everyday golf courses, golfers at our local course. And now you've obviously blown up. I fly all over the world. I've taught this game on 5 continents now. I've done golf schools everywhere. So, it's changed. There's a big online aspect to it now, as you know as well. You have the same thing. But we've both come a long way since sitting there teaching local golfers at our courses.
I think the golf industry has changed dramatically since we first met, obviously.
Yeah.
For starters, I think that social media naturally blew up. A lot of people want to become influencers now. I still like to think of myself as a golf coach above all else, as I'm sure you do.
Mm-hmm.
We have this big following that we try and help our audience and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, golf is our priority in our careers. The golf world has gone through a weird wave. Obviously, COVID kind of, put a wrench into everything. People couldn't really practice. So the online coaching side, I think, blew up quite a bit during that period. I remember it was so crazy during that time. Like people couldn't even buy golf nets on Amazon because
Yes.
there was none left. Everybody
Yes.
everybody were buying things out. People who were skeptical for online coaching kind of had no choice if they wanted to try and get better. So
Mm-hmm.
people were forced into certain situations that maybe made them a little bit uncomfortable, similar to working on your golf swing.
Yep.
But for good reasons. I think a lot of people obviously had good experiences and stayed. Maybe some others a little bit less. People learn very differently, so I don't put it past them. But yeah, the world has changed quite a bit in the 10 years that we've known each other for golf. But I'll tell you one thing that hasn't changed. Most golfers are still practicing the wrong shit.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that Instagram tips from a lot of these so-called golf coaches are still way too generalized, and people aren't getting better enough from them. And you'd be amazed how many people will reach out to me and say, "Well, if golf is so much better and the information's so much better, why are people's handicaps not getting better?" Well, first of all, just because the information is better doesn't necessarily mean people are actually taking that correct information that applies to them. At the end of the day, the one thing that I believe tries to separate me from everybody else is that I try to be so specific with the information I share online. This is a very specific concept that will improve very specifically these golfers who struggle with so and so ball flight and contact and whatnot. And I just believe that there is a little too much information on the internet of hey, you want to swing more from the inside, do this. But there's no real, you know, applicable information for other golfers in that video. They don't know any better. So they're just going to practice it whether it applies to them or not. And, the reality is it's really easy to pick apart issues in a golf swing. It's really difficult to figure out the order in which you need to change things, the process you need to go through, and whether something even applies to you or not. I think is very difficult. You can create a slice in 45 different ways, as Chris, and if there's one swing tip to help you correct your slice, it might apply to one of those 45 golfers. Like, what are we doing here?
I think you and me are both functions and matchups instructors, right? So I think that's why we've always been able to, over the years we've taught golf swing a ton. And I had a guy in a golf school about 2 weeks ago, and he was a slicer, and he was a dumped under block slicer, right?
So just
And
just for the record, clarify what that means for the average listener who might not know.
the path was severely into out, right? It
Okay.
wasn't the traditional over the top slicer, but the
Yeah.
face was just so
Basically,
open.
basically the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, the opposite of what you traditionally think was a slice. And he saw a tip on the internet, and it said you have to aim right, and if you aim right, he was a right-handed player, you'll stop slicing. His slice just got worse, right? He threw everything farther out to the right, and
Well, let's actually play out the scenario for the audience. Okay, so you have a golfer who is swinging too far from the inside.
yes,
The face angle is very open, which is creating essentially like a push start line that also fades and curves further
yes,
offline.
yes.
This golfer
Fade is
believes
a nice word. It's not
right.
fade.
Okay, so let's say block slice is worse than push fade, but let's
Yes.
say there's a golfer who is swinging too far from inside out, cannot manage the club face very well. They push it relative to their start line, and then it curves further offline. By all
Yes.
accounts, they read information on the internet and see that the ball is curving to the right for a right-handed golfer, so they assume the ball is slicing.
Yep.
And then a tip on the internet told them, well, if you aim more to the right, again, for a right-handed golfer, this is going to help you draw the ball, which the information is like partially correct. If you aim further right, it helps you to swing more from the inside, which
Yes.
if you are a true slicer of the golf ball who is cutting across it, there is some factual information within there that would help that player. Problem
Yes.
is, this golfer swings too far from inside out as it is, and it's a very different form of creating a slice miss.
Yep.
And they take this information, they aim further right. They are now swinging even further from the inside. And then I would imagine it's either the blocks got worse or they might start shanking it because it's now double digits inside out and so
Yeah.
on.
He said that he just couldn't fix it. It seems to go been going farther right for the last couple of years. So I simply squared him off, right? I brought him back, squared him off, got him aligned towards the target. And he had a really weak grip. I mean, you talk weak. So the V's are over at the left shoulder for a right-handed golfer. And I put the grip on there strong, and he started hitting draws. So, I think the tips on the internet would be strengthen a grip. That might work. It's not a bad idea for a
So
slicer.
already there's two different tips this person might have read. One to close their alignment off, one to change their grip. One actually would have helped their pattern, one wouldn't.
Yeah, he unfortunately took the one that made the pattern worse and didn't go after the grip type. And you see that all the time with people who dig
Well,
into,
this kind of leans into the thing I mentioned at the start of this, which is information on the internet is way too fucking generalized. I hate to
yes.
swear, but it's true. And
Mhm.
when you have golfers, the masses, you have to understand they don't know what they're looking for when they watch a video. I think this is the most common issue with golf instruction on the internet. There's so much good information online, better than there ever has been in the history of golf instruction. But if it is not specific enough or it's not communicated well enough, you're going to have Joe Schmo who's going to go online and watch a video, think it applies to him because he has a similar ball flight tendency. And obviously, the information wasn't specific enough and he applied the wrong shit and it made him worse. And then we
Yes.
say, well, why are golfers getting worse if the information's better? Well, it's not that the information's not better, it's that the communication's not good enough. I would argue, if there's anything that's still lagging behind, in my opinion, it's the communication more than the info.
Sure. And the specific info to the player, right? I mean,
Correct. Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is essentially we're not specializing this information enough
correct.
to cater to
Correct.
very specific needs that players have when they're trying to work on their golf swing.
Absolutely. I think if you look at golf coaching now, not just a conversation between me and you, but if you look at in general, the level of talent of golf coaching has gone up significantly in the last few years. I think it still lags where it could be, but it's gone
launch
up.
monitors have helped.
Mhm.
I think I think there's a lot of reasons as to why that's helped, but yeah, definitely gotten better for sure.
Yeah, but with the advent of social media, communicating that knowledge to the player, I think is gone down. I think golf instruction.
Well, let's hear. I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
Has communication gotten worse? Because I don't know if I would say it's gotten worse. Oh, for sure, it hasn't gotten better. But has
Right.
communication gotten worse, or have more people become golf instructors almost too easily? And because they never refine their communication, you're adding people to this pool of golf coaches who aren't quite as refined as maybe what the small pool of golf coaches used to be. And so
Sure.
we think the communication's gotten worse, but really it's the average golf coach is not quite as good as it used to be, maybe in terms of communication specifically.
I think it is now. I mean, this could be long winded, but I think if you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
back at like the '90s, right, when you had a golf instructor, you had one flaw. They didn't have the knowledge that you and I have access to now, right?
Mhm.
It's so much easier to gain knowledge as a coach, but you also it was harder to break into golf instruction. You had to go and find that course that would let you teach there. You generally had to work as a cart guy,
And for
and
the
you had to
record,
go.
I'm one of these kind of social media people who just happen to get to the next level. I worked really hard at it, don't get me wrong, like, I'm
Yeah,
very grateful, and I'm also, I'm very confident in what I did, but at the same time, I'm not a PGA member. I didn't go and work as a cart boy and build my way up and went to do playing exams and all these things. Like, I
sure.
was given an opportunity in the pro shop, just taking golf lessons from people on the phone.
Yeah,
And after 5 years of listening to people explain the golf swing, they gave me an opportunity on the driving range and I busted my ass to get to the next level. But I
sure.
think the difference for me is I refined my communication skills and my knowledge before immediately just blowing up on socials.
If you're doing that, you put in the time before you did it, right? A lot of
For
these
sure I did.
coaches now go out and play a few rounds of golf and talk about what they do in their golf swing, feels wise,
Here are
think
the
they know
3
what
tips
they're doing.
I did to break 100 2 years
Yes,
ago. Now
yes,
please go and watch this video so
yes,
I can make money
absolutely.
off you breaking 100.
Yes, and that's a lot of golf instructors nowadays versus,
Look, I don't
the
wanna sound like
experience.
a boomer and one of these like, "Oh, there
We do.
shouldn't be golf influencers." Like, I absolutely believe that golf instruction will continue to get better, and I'm
Yeah,
all for people making a career out of it through the help of social media. I just wanna make that very clear. Like, I am a byproduct of social media to an extent, even though obviously my upbringing was a little different, but I did get opportunities because of socials that I
sure,
wouldn't have otherwise. I
absolutely.
just
Both of
feel
our
as though
careers are there.
yeah, I just feel as though people have gotten more accustomed to taking shortcuts now more than ever, and
Sure.
they haven't refined certain skill sets that we did that maybe is what's damaging to the golf instruction world as a whole.
Sure. I mean, when we started out, I mean, it was kind of the beginning of social media golf instruction. I remember my
Yeah,
first
yeah.
post was like 2012.
Oh,
Back when you had to
I
post
hate
a.
the way I use and you know what's funny? I hate the way I used to communicate the information even fucking
We
10
didn't have
years
an
ago.
option. You'd go on Instagram
Yeah.
and you'd post a picture with some tips on it in the very beginning. That's all you could
It's
do,
true.
and that's
Actually,
what
anyway, it had to be a
video.
square format, so you had to make sure you
Yes.
even zoomed in the photos.
Yeah, that's what it used to be, and then we were able to start making little short videos, and then things came
15 seconds.
YouTube and
15
all that.
seconds. All my first videos are basically just like me recreating the problem and then trying to find a way to like verbalize it via text as best as possible.
Absolutely. I remember one of your videos back in the day. I was like, "Oh, this is cool." You put a block down in a bunker and you hit a ball, and the goal was to not hit the block underneath the ball so that you could shout
Well,
out
I even
years ago.
actually I went even a step further. I put sand on the block and I said,
Yes,
if you
yes,
catch just the sand and graze the block, you'll hear a very distinct like clicking
yep,
sound, and that's you collecting enough sand, getting the ball out of the bunker. And it's almost like a little bit of a cheat code to get the ball out for
sure,
beginners, right? Because it
sure.
obviously activates the bounce in a certain way, like automatically. But it was a tip that I feel like people would connect to if they really suck in bunkers, which people obviously do often struggle in the bunker.
Yeah,
And yeah, I find that early on, your best option was to try and relate to people on a very, very dumbed down level because you had such a short
yes,
amount of time in those posts to communicate whatever information you were trying to get across.
yes. I mean, you had 15, 30 seconds. Twitter was barely any words. I never did
Mhm.
anything with Twitter. You did. You built
Yeah.
up a big following on Twitter. I was not saying I cared about, but when you started doing that, I looked at it and I was like, I only have that many words to try and communicate something. I'm not even going to play
I
this
think
game at
for
all.
me, the reason Twitter was an avenue was because I found that I can still verbalize things via text kind of like OG Instagram, the way you're talking about. At the
Yeah,
same time, I used to offer a bunch of like, for the next 30 minutes, I'm here. If you want to send me a swing video, I'll give you a couple of tips of
yep,
information that will make you better. And honestly, I still do them. I haven't done one actually in a couple of months, but ironically enough, that was like the reason people connected to me on Twitter. I mean, everybody loves free information, let's be honest,
sure.
but
And that
um,
and that was personalized information. You were doing it for them.
personalized. It
Yeah,
wasn't me posting a general tip. It was show me literally your golf swing and I'll give you, 2 pointers that will
yeah,
absolutely make you get better because I can assure you my information will be much more specific than any video you'll see online at the time.
yeah. Twitter just it wasn't my jam. I liked I like getting in front of the camera and talking about golf swing stuff. That was what I enjoyed more.
Okay.
But
Okay, you're in front of the camera. Let's talk golf swing stuff now. Enough
let's do
yapping
it.
about the old days.
Dude, we're both near boomer age, by the way. You brought that up earlier. We're both
No, I'm
approaching
still I'm
rapidly.
still in my 30s. Don't put me in the same category as you. You're not. I'm in my 30s. You are not. Don't tell me that. Okay. How about this? Let's talk about because we mentioned the social media side. That's one aspect. What else do you feel like has inhibited golfers from being able to get better besides just the information?
I think when you look at
And just to actually, sorry to cut you off, Chris, but just to kind of preface this in advance, Chris has run golf schools for the last 10 to 15 years.
yeah,
I would imagine your average golfer in those schools is obviously not the level of a tour player. So you probably deal with a lot of the common mistakes that your everyday golfer could benefit from. And
yeah,
so your information is going to be much more specific to that knowledge than most coaches.
yeah. I'm lucky in my business. I have the Vegas side where I have really good juniors. I built 2 D1 conference champions, got a few 59s out of my players, but the core of that touring business is the 5 to 25 handicap
Sure.
golfer,
That's a
right?
pretty
And
massive range, by the way. But yeah.
oh, dude, if you just make it any more specific than that, it would be pretty tough to sell out these golf schools.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Of course. Of course.
you personalize everything in the golf schools, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't work. So everything you introduce a concept, you go one on one, but you talk about what the average golfer struggles with, and I'm interested to hear your feedback in a second and how this relates to the players you're working on. But if you look at it, most golfers come in and they look at the symptom, whether it be early extension, over the top slice or whatever it is. They look at the symptom and they try and attack that. Whereas I would say with the average golfer, 80 to 85% of them, something goes wrong early on in their backswing. And that throws the entire chain into a terrible spot. I watched you do a long form video on YouTube where you were analyzing regular golfers
Mhm.
videos, and you were talking about this player is going to come over the top because the club head sucks too far, the hands work too far out, club head sucks too far inside early on. That's something I see every golf school from 3 or 4 people that are swinging over the top, and they have no clue that has any impact. The forces applied to the handle.
I'll tell you why people latch on to those types of issues. I think number one, most golfers are told, those who slice the ball anyways, that they are over the top. They're told by their friends when they play, they're
Yes.
told by YouTube videos. And physically speaking, when you watch back a golf swing, it is a lot easier to trace the movement of the shaft in the golf
Yeah.
swing than to isolate the hand path and look at what it's doing, or to isolate the club face and look at what it's doing.
Yes.
Right? The
Yes.
shaft movement is bigger, it's larger in the grand scheme of like what you're going to look at when you analyze the
Sure.
golf. Your eyes will immediately focus on the club movement. So on top
Yeah.
of them constantly being told these things by, I used to call it like the blind leading the blind. It's like
Sure.
one person who doesn't know better trying to tell someone else who doesn't know better about a problem in their golf swing. And more often than not, unfortunately, this falls within, like you said, the symptom category. It is not the root of the issue. It is the byproduct of the chain reaction of events that kind of force a golfer to swing really poorly, and then people focus on that. Now, to your point that you mentioned of the first golfer we ran through, if the club face is wide open, I mean, does the golfer have a chance? I literally just posted about this last week. Like the golfer who is going to have the club face open is going to do things not to make it open at impact. Those
Yes.
things oftentimes will unfortunately sacrifice the movement of the club. And
Yeah.
so it's a tough situation because like I don't expect recreational golfers to know better. Like you don't expect them to know what they're looking for. But at the
Yes.
same time, if the information is specific enough online, they would know what to look for, right? So it's like kind of a, you know, you're spinning your wheels a little bit, but at the same time, you're going to run into the same problem over and over.
I say in all my golf schools before I start my driver session that the golf swing is a series of movement patterns put together to get the golf ball from point A to point B. Most people have compensations in their movement to fix faults.
For the record, some compensations are good and some aren't, but
Yes.
everybody's got them.
Yes. We talk about that. I'm like, most people who are early extending, that early extension saving your golf swing. Yeah, it's not an ideal movement, but it's giving you a chance to actually get back to that golf ball. You know, you have, if you want to get rid of the early extension, you got to fix that root cause fault. But I would be interested to know, you know, just talking to you, you've worked with some really elite players. You got one of the best Champions Tour players in the game right now. You've worked with a player who got #1 on the European Tour in ball striking. What is the difference to you in terms of the elite golfer versus the regular golfer? Are there pattern differences when it comes to the flaws that they have versus the flaws that you'll see in the everyday golfer?
Well, for sure. I mean, let's put it this way. I hate this idea of like swing your swing. I think it's a load of garbage. I
Mhm.
fucking hate that sentence. I hate it so much because the reality is like, yeah, swing your swing until your swing is not good and then swing someone else's fucking swing. You know, like
Yeah,
your
sure.
swing, you know, is just, it's not that simple to break it down that way. But I'll say this, even the least efficient patterns, and I put that in quotations because like we'll define what is optimal and what isn't, but like even what you would consider the least optimal movements on the PGA Tour. So the ones that you wouldn't tell someone to copy. That's maybe a
Yeah,
different way to phrase it. So like the
sure.
the ones that are very steep, the ones that are very handsy through impact, the ones that are, you know, relying on maybe a little bit more timing than other golfers. Even those ones, issues that they experience are much more refined than the everyday golfer.
Yes.
At the end of the day, just because a person has an issue doesn't mean that it's equivalent to the PGA Tour player who has the same issue. There is a scale in which your issue takes place. There's a severity to it. And, you know, everybody talks about Scotty Scheffler's a little steep and a little early extendy. And, you know, he's not fucking Hunter Mahan when he rotates through the ball in shallow, right? Like for the deep cuts out there, like the OG 2010 Hunter Mahan move. But at the same time, first of all, he's the elite of the elite. His hand-eye coordination, his skill is levels above the average golfer who hits a ball once every 3 months. You know, this guy's
Mhm.
hitting 500 balls a week or more or less, but he's hitting a lot of balls. And secondly, even the amount in which he does these issues is much more refined than the average golfer. You know, he might have a little bit of early extension. He might be a touch deep on the ball, but he shifts his weight a lot better than the average golfer. He compresses the ball a lot better than the average golfer. He creates shaft lean a lot better than the average golfer. So it's like, yeah, there's maybe one little flaw within a pattern of his, again, flaw in quotations, that he has, but it is far improved relative to the recreational golfer. So for me, it's almost like you can't even compare the two. You know, the PGA Tour player does way more things better than the average golfer, even if from a
Sure.
macro perspective the swings look similar. It's just not as similar as you think it is. Yes, you
Sure.
can highlight the club movement, you can highlight a little bit of a pivot reaction, but their average move is way better than yours for many other reasons, right? Now, in taking the elite of the elite, I mean, you know, yeah, the player you're referencing is Yannick Paul, who I worked with on the DP World Tour for like, I worked with him for 8 years coming out of college, but uh, he finished first in strokes gained approach. I think it was like 2023 or 2022, around there. Uh, you know, he would be somebody who probably fits a little bit more into my preferences as a pattern, you know, a little shallower with the club, a little bit more rotation with the body, a little bit less reliance on the hands. But The one thing I want to say, yes, I have my preferences. Yes, I'll, as best as I can, try to get players close to those preferences. Obviously, in many cases, you can't do that. At the same time, those preferences aren't without flaws themselves. Like being shallow, if you're under pressure and you get a little quick and you don't rotate as well, you're going to get under the plane and you're going to have to save it. And you could hit a block and a pull draw and so on.
Sure.
Rory is a prime example of that. Rory draws the ball. Yes, it's a wonderful move. There's way more good than not in his move. At the same time, you saw it at the Masters when he gets a little bit under pressure. If he tries to fade the ball and he gets the hands a little too deep coming down, path goes right, and you can double cross it really quick trying to hit a fade. So, you know, even the best of golf swings are not without timing and not without their own issues. It's just that
Sure.
I believe there are certain patterns within the game of golf, which I have worked with my players to get closer to, where I believe we limit some of those timing elements. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and just speak out of my what. Like, Stephen Ames has won 9 times on the Champions Tour with me. Like, he's obviously done something really well within the mold of what my preferences are that has worked. So, I'm not going to sit here and say any golf instruction information is bulletproof. I don't believe that at all. But at the same time, there are certain matchups, as you referenced, that I believe can create a little bit less timing than others. And when you have the opportunity to work with players within those frameworks, you have an advantage. Let's put it that way.
Do
But
you
yeah.
do you when you're working with good players, do you think it's easier to have, and let's preface this, we both have functions and matchups, backgrounds. Anything can work within reason. Do you think it's easier to have a player that comes to you that is already swinging kind of along the guidelines that you like in a golf swing versus a matchup that's completely different than your preferences?
Well, yeah, because first of all, if a player is of a certain skill level and they come to you with a certain matchup of movements that aren't aligned with my preferences, I cannot really change that much. I can make it more optimal, but I cannot
Yeah.
mess with the DNA of his overall movement. If he's a
Right.
little bit more of an upright player and a little bit steeper into the ball and a little bit more reliant on timing, we can incrementally improve those areas. I'm not going to take a golfer who's too upright and shove his arms way across his chest and expect him to play
Sure.
good golf. It's just unrealistic.
Sure.
Keep in mind, they also have an identity. They have played a certain level of golf doing certain things. So they also associate their good golf to the pattern they have. By
Yeah.
definition, if you're changing their pattern too much, you could also be messing with their psyche, their confidence, their trust, everything in getting back to the golf ball.
You
Right.
can
So
absolutely ruin a good player's swing.
for sure you can. And
So
that's why,
easy.
like, if a player comes to me and their pattern is just slightly off, but within the framework that I have historically preferred, I think it is much easier to get them into those guidelines than a
Sure.
player who is the polar opposite. That's also why I believe personally this is going to sound crazy, but for the everyday golfer, it's easier to fix a slice because we know the model that works to fix slices and it takes nothing to get players to draw the ball. But
Yeah.
I find it is easier to fix a better player who's drawing the ball too much and needs to neutralize it than the opposite.
Sure. Sure. That makes, and I do think you can throw an elite player. This is one of the difference between your 60-year-old average golfer and an elite player. That elite player can find bottom of the swing arc with a change a lot quicker than the recreational golfer. I think you would agree with that.
For sure. And I think that, players who historically would be too under the plane, swinging too far from inside out, too shallow, the low point too far back, it's really easy to steepen everything and get things forward for a
Yeah.
better player because it immediately makes them feel like they're creating more compression right off the bat.
Yeah.
So that's not a difficult thing to work with. If you have a player who is coming to you, an elite golfer who's way too steep and stalling out and finding their way at the bottom, and it's really good, and they won a PGA Tour event last year, but then missed 14 cuts in a row
Yes.
because they found the timing one week. I have a couple of players I can name, but I'll refrain from naming them because I've
Mhm.
actually, had discussions with some of these guys. But these players are harder to work with, not because it's impossible to improve them. Of course, any golfer can improve. That's literally our goal as coaches. But trying to neutralize the pitch of the shaft, the hands, and all these other elements, you're risking moving the low point even further back. And
Yeah.
so your change for that player is not making them immediately strike the ball better in that moment, unless you're adding a secondary change at the same time. And now it's like, well, now I need a player to do two things better, not one thing better.
Yes.
Right?
That gets
That's
tough.
why that's tough. I don't want to keep harping on this, but like a high handicap golfer who comes to see you, who's cutting across the ball and hitting down on it too much and the face is open, man, you shallow them out and you get the face better. You will clean up their strike right away. You'll clean up the ball flight right away, and your change will immediately create more compression for them because of how they're losing it with
Yeah.
their high spin rates and loft and all of that. And so they're immediately seeing growth. But a tour player who does that is already creating compression. Like they're on the PGA Tour. They're not, just because they're steep into the ball doesn't mean they're losing compression on it, right? So, you know, for them, trying to make two changes at once can be a little bit more challenging no matter how much spatial awareness they have. So you
Sure.
have to be more cautious, but you also have to change your own strategies in working with those players. You cannot put them in line with your preferences. It'll never work. Never.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's why I say like a tour player who's a little too under the plane, a little too shallow, low point a little too far back already, and they have certain ball flight tendencies. Those are cakewalks to me. I mean, any good coach, in my opinion, can neutralize that to some degree if you can figure out where the root of the problem is.
Sure. Sure. I think it's fascinating to sit here and talk, about the differences between high level players and the
Well,
regular
it's just two entirely different lessons. I mean, the
It
reality
is.
is like it's not even just as far as to say like they're going to hit the ball better in front of me. Like my communication changes with tour players versus everyday golfers.
Sure.
The structure of the lessons change. These tour players, they know how to practice, right? They got to this level. Can their practice be more optimal? Sure. But for
Yep.
the most part, they're not going to be lost when they go to the driving range and grind. Like they're going to have some semblance of structure to what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas your everyday golfer is going to go out there, they're going to be given information, they're going to pull out their driver before they've even stretched and rip full speed trying to do something new that you told them, not see the results in the first 10 balls, and then either walk off or text you that it's not working. And then you're like, okay, now I need to break down the entire lesson structure for this person.
We have that
So
speech in golf schools every single time that, if you try and pull that game with me, then you're on your
Well,
own.
I think with better players, the technical change you're making is vastly more important. And with recreational golfers, the structure of how you're communicating and giving them the work is more important.
I agree with that. And I think when you're looking at, as a coach, I think one of the things that's fun when you deal with that 20 handicap and you make some big changes early that they understand, you can really see those changes instantly. When you're working with, a lot of elite players, on the PGA Tour, that's several weeks before you can truly measure, hey, he's making more money, more FedEx Cup points. You can truly measure the results of your work.
Well, here's the thing is that when you're working with a recreational golfer, they're going to go from a 150-yard slice 6-iron
Yes.
to 185 yards down the middle and drawing. You will see that change instantly.
Yeah.
But a tour player is already hitting their 6-iron about 180 to 195 yards. They're
Yeah.
already going to be relatively accurate on their good ones. And even though you are making a change, yes, you might be able to see it from your eyes. The average golfer will not be able to see that change. And then you're diving into, strokes gained and, developing more comfort with the change on the golf course. But I will say this, the biggest difference is a tour player better like what feel you're giving them within the first 5 golf balls or they're out.
Sure.
They know, because they have so much spatial awareness, they will know instantly when you're giving them a piece of advice, whether they will soak it all in and go and apply that information, or this is not for me. I'm not even going to be able to commit to this here on the range. How the hell am I ever going to do it and play for $4 million tomorrow? It is not going to happen. So
Yeah.
I think that there's also a little bit more pressure with the tour players, not because the changes are less visible to the naked eye. That's a small part of it. It's because they need to like this feel now, not in a week. Whereas recreational golfer who's already dealing with some poor ball flights, they can push through a little bit more discomfort because number one, they're not playing for anything of significant value, I would say. Obviously,
Sure.
we're passionate, we want to be better, but like I'm monetizing this in my head. But then
Yeah.
secondly, they've seen enough bad strikes to be able to push through them in general when they practice a little bit more than the good player.
Sure. When you're playing for dinner, when you're playing for your house, when you're playing to pay for your lifestyle, it gets a little bit different than
Yeah,
the average golfer.
for
So
sure.
yeah,
Okay, so how about this? Let's leave it on this because I don't want to ramble on. We can ramble on for 4 hours an episode, but
I
we're going to
know.
be doing at the bare minimum bi-weekly episodes. I would say potentially weekly. We're going to kind of run this out and see how much time you and I can both allocate to this. But at the bare minimum bi-weekly, you would agree with, right?
Hmm.
Um, we're going to have some instruction talks. We're going to have some people that are going to come on and chat with us. We
Yep.
are very lucky that we're friends with a lot of significant people in the golf industry, I would say, that have gone on to do great things with their players. So we're going to have them on and interview them as well. How about this? Um, Tell me, what would be two pieces of advice you would leave to the audience if they were to go out and practice tomorrow? Very general.
Two pieces of advice that I would leave the audience if they were to go out and practice tomorrow. First of
Yeah.
all, concentrate on things that you can improve the quickest. Most players struggle with short game. Concentrate on improving that. Next thing, when they go out on a golf course, think your way around that golf course a little bit better. Understand your own game. Understand what your capabilities are right now. If you're not able to improve your game at all, understand your capabilities and don't think that you're more elite than you are if you're trying to score better. Most
Isn't it
players
fun?
take on things they don't know how to do.
Dude, I literally have some buddies who are like not golf guys, and like every once in a while we'll go have some fun together on the golf course and whatnot. The guy
Yeah,
will slice 9 drivers in a row and then get into the trees on the right and somehow think he can hit like this low draw around the trees
right.
all of a sudden. You're like, dude, I
Yeah.
haven't seen you draw the ball in my life in 15 years. You're not going to do it now under some tree and hit some hero shot.
Never going to happen. But they'll try it. They'll try it, and then they'll shoot
And then you know
113.
what? Some people will make a case that the fun of the game is trying these hero shots. Because at the end of the day, the reality is
I
boring
know.
golf is where you'll score your best, but it's
Yes.
boring for a reason. You can punch out
Yes.
and guarantee yourself a bogey, but hitting the hero shot if you make par is like the best feeling in the world for some of these guys.
I understand that's what brings you back. You hit one hero shot that you run up on the green, you're going to play again. But if you're trying to lower your scores, I think that's what matters the most at the end
Well,
of
I
the
just
day.
think you have to separate. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to have fun on the golf course, or are you trying to actually take your handicap seriously and lower it? Because if that's the case, you can't be hitting that shot ever. But if you're trying to have fun and you don't give a shit, excuse my
Yes.
language, by all means, going into hero shot as much as you want.
Yeah, hit it through those trees. It'll work out well for you.
Yeah. All right. Next episode, we are going to do some hot takes. Because at the end of the day, I don't want this to just be some like PG show. We have our thoughts on the golf swing. We have a lot of hot takes, I think, in the golf instruction world. And I don't want to be super polarizing, but at the same time, there is some bad information out there, and we're going to fucking talk about it.
Let's do it. Why not be polarizing? It's fun.
Yeah, to a degree. I don't want, I'm Canadian. I'm too nice. I have a
Yeah,
limit.
that's true. You got your hockey
Don't forget.
jerseys.
Don't forget. Also, go Habs, go! By the way, for the hockey audience
There
out there,
you go. I'm rooting for you, your boys.
really, really sad loss yesterday, but we're rocking and rolling still.
That's
So
a fun series right now.
yeah. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next one.